Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be with Josh Lauer, the data guy most marketing teams desperately need. He's helped over 100 businesses to turn their marketing chaos into clarity. He specializes in fixing GA4 headaches, turning messy data warehouses into gold mine, and helping companies with 20 million in revenue finally get the answers from their marketing data. Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Let's go back in time. You didn't wake up yesterday and become a Google Analytics expert. How did you get started?
So basically, I went back to college right at the end of my 20s. I spent most of my 20s as a songwriter, living in my parents' basement, hoping that something would happen with that, and ultimately needed to get out of the house. So went to school for internet marketing, figuring I could probably get a day job with that. And eventually, kind of after getting into the industry, analytics is sort of analytics and SEO are kind of the main niches that I sort of found myself focusing on.
Awesome. What in a very short period of time, you've helped over 100 businesses. What were some of the key turning points that led to that kind of rapid growth?
Yeah. So, I think the career path here really starts in 2012. And so when I say over 100 businesses, there was an in-house place that I was from 2012 to 2016 where I cut my teeth on a lot of that. And then I went in-house at a few other places before going full-time freelance in 2022. So between, in about 13 years, it's probably well past hundreds of businesses. But I think it definitely got accelerated by the fact that I was the default guy in-house at a place for 4 years that worked on every single website that came through. And so that really kind of, gave me a lot of experience really fast.
Absolutely. You are known for fixing GA4 headaches. Let's not assume anything about our audience. What is GA4 and why is it such a pain?
Well, GA4 is Google's latest version of Google Analytics. And I think the reason it's such a pain is because the reporting, the entire kind of structure of how the tracking works is a complete paradigm shift from what was Universal Analytics, or sometimes now called GA3. And so if we're talking about Google Analytics, and if you have a website, chances are you've heard of it. It's, I think, over its lifetime been installed on over 70 million websites. So it's kind of the default analytics solution. It starts off free. They're extremely generous with what they allow you to track. By the time that you are probably going to be asked to pay for Google Analytics, your business is probably doing hundreds of millions of dollars at that point. If it's not, that's a whole other thing. But but yeah, it's the main tool. And I think there were reports in the previous version of it that were really easy to find certain key pieces of data that marketers look for. And that kind of all shifted when GA4 first came about. And one of the reasons is that GA4 is founded on events and users. And a key part of Universal Analytics was sessions. And so they've sort of been bringing sessions back into GA4. And really, what is a session? A session is I came to your website, I clicked around a few pages, I might have bought something, maybe I didn't, maybe I filled out a form, and eventually I leave the site. And at that point, if we're being super technical, a 30-minute timer after the last thing I did starts counting down. And once it hits zero, the session's over.
So, what are the most common mistakes businesses make when trying to set up Google Analytics, and how do they fix them?
I think the biggest mistake is that they're like, we installed Google Analytics. Go see if the answer to this question is here. Now, in the old version, maybe it was, but today it's kind of much different. And certainly if you're like, we installed it, odds are you might have just installed like the base code pixel. And so you've got like basic page views tracking and stuff like that. But if that's all you did and you didn't kind of go a step farther and make sure your forms were tracking or your e-commerce data is tracking whatever kind of website you're working with, then you've got this scenario where like I think people just think, oh, you do the basic thing and all the answers are there. But like the truth is you need to actually think about like what do you want to know about your site and how your visitors interact with it and make sure that all of those things are accounted for one way or another.
That makes a lot of sense. For you talk about bringing chaos into clarity, turning it into clarity for marketing teams that are overwhelmed by the data. What's their first step to kind of simplifying the dashboard and focusing on what really matters?
Yeah, the first step is really like asking yourself the question, what is the point of the website? What do we want people to do when we get here, right? The marketers are driving traffic, and certainly we want to make sure that traffic is doing the thing that we want the site to do, whether that's again e-commerce or if it's a B2B play, it's usually a form submission that's happening, right? So identifying that that's the case, and let's talk about the form submission for a minute, because some websites will have like a form where it's just on the contact page and there's a drop down and you're like, I need support, I want to talk to sales, what have you. Obviously, if you need support, you're probably not like a business lead. So that would be an example if you'd want to track that form, as in if they say, I want to talk to sales, we're going to count that as the conversion event. And we might track all form submissions and take note of what sort of drop down item was selected in that example. And within GA4, we would then say only count when the drop down says, I want to talk to sales, as far as having it be a goal. From that point, though, once we know what the goal is and we've identified it and we're tracking, we're on the path to having much better understanding of how our website is performing.
You talk a lot about reports that are easy to understand and give us what we actually need as opposed to lots of meaningless data. What's one report that every business should automate, and what tools would you recommend to do that?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to my mind is a channel report, right? So you're spending money driving traffic, whether it's through Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, TikTok, all the other possible places, and they come to the site. And did they come from those ads? Did they come direct? Did they come from organic search? And then, given that we have the conversions tracking, how are they doing at actually, filling out the form or purchasing, right? And which channels are driving the most activity?
You've achieved some amazing results for some of the businesses that you've worked on. Can you give us an example of one? Like, what was the problem they had when they came to you, and then kind of what was the magical transformation you were able to create?
Yeah. So one example is when I went in house back in 2016. I was working for Lead Pages, and that was an exciting kind of moment for me because I was like a marketer on a marketing team selling products to marketers, right? So it was the ultimate place to be if you're a marketer, and things were going quite well at Lead Pages, but there was a big question around what's actually driving all of this growth. Like we're growing, but we don't know how we're growing. So that was an example of I got in there and got made sure the tracking was kind of flawless. There's a lot of different touch points where things can get broken, right? We don't have a UTM link tracking on this email, or maybe we forgot to put UTMs on certain ads. And so that's inflating the amount of direct traffic you're seeing. And it just looks like all these people are coming there. So we were able to get the entire tracking setup streamlined. And then from there, we had enough data that we were able to start doing some more advanced things with it, like looking at website activity habits and trying to identify what some of the highest LTV customers were doing or how they were looking at, purchasing Lead Pages and how that was different from some of the other people, and trying to identify basically we want to get more people that are going to succeed with the tool and less people that are going to sign up for 1 month and then, I got really excited because I was on a webinar and I was going to change my life. And then 30 days later, they need that money for rent. So they're canceling, you know. And so, yeah, being able to identify the key factors in terms of like what industry should we target, what kind of people should we target in terms of that like, sort of I like to call it entrepreneurial spirit. Like you want to be an entrepreneur, you're not quite there yet. You're thinking about making that move. That was a key detail for lead pages. We wanted people to get into the platform that were going to succeed.
That very important. You emphasize ignoring useless metrics that don't drive revenue. Can you give us a couple example of the vanity metrics we should not be paying attention to and what we should be focusing on instead?
Yeah, so I think the big one that's kind of really funny that you don't hear as much today, but sometimes you do is the word hits, right? Like we put that thing up there and it got a lot of hits. Or you might say our website traffic, the sessions were super high number, or even like we're ranking number one for insert like search keyword that has no intent, right? So like it doesn't matter if you're ranking number one for a search phrase like that is informational where like they might not even click through to your website, right? So like, but yet you're going to share, a lot of marketing teams like we're number one for this. We got this high volume stuff. What we really want is to be able to identify the metrics that move the needle for the business. Another example too is, with social media, right? Like how many followers do you have? That implies a certain amount of reach. And it's a vanity thing, right? Like the bigger that number, the bigger the reach. But the reality is each social media platform has its own algorithm and the reach is heavily influenced by that. So like understanding how your reach, impacts that algorithm. As an example, if we're going to take social media, you know, you could say uh, how many likes per post, or how many comments per post, or how many shares per post. These kinds of things indicate that you're potentially amplifying your reach versus just like we had 200 posts to our social channel last month or something like that. And it's like, well, that's a lot of noise. Like maybe that's too much.
Interesting. You specialize in fixing GA4 headaches. How do we know if we've got one?
I think if you're opening GA4 and you're scratching your head and saying this doesn't make sense, that can't be right. I have data in this other tool that says otherwise. Or maybe the data is like, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's like sensational. You're like, this sounds way too good to be true. And you're like, I bring this report to the rest of the company and they laugh at me because my numbers are totally inflated and they can't possibly be right. That's actually probably more often than not more likely what the problem is that someone has a result that it sounds exciting, so they get excited and they share it before like fully vetting out that there wasn't a mistake there.
What's one habit or daily ritual that helps you stay sharp?
Ooh, I think in general, I'm a big fan of the never stop learning sort of thing, right? So um, as soon as you kind of feel like think about like getting a new car, right? Like the first time you drive it, like you're like, where are the headlights? How do I do the windshield wipers? And you're a little bit clunky, but like, a couple weeks in and you've got everything dialed in, the seat's just in the right spot. You don't need to have to think about where to press things. If you find yourself driving that car without having to think, it's probably time to pause and ask yourself, have you learned anything recently?
Interesting. You've achieved so much success for businesses. What's your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge is trying to figure out kind of how to turn the page. I think like as far as and what I mean there is like really scaling to the next level. There's a lot of different skills that I possess that it's hard to find other people to work with that carry all of them. And so I'm sort of realizing that as I expand, I probably need more people that do any one of the things that I do to sort of augment my skill set, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
I think there's something really exciting about setting up the data and then opening up like the real-time view and you're like, oh, there's people there, it's coming in, it's flowing, it's working. And then on top of that, later on, when somebody's like, okay, we're exploring, this concept, we want to run this promotion and it's going to have these details and like I can open up the analytics and be like, roughly this many people maybe match with that. Or let's say we get the promo going, I can crack it open and be able to share like what worked or what looked like it worked, maybe what didn't work. Kind of the entire sort of piece where it's you know, that anytime you kind of create an analysis for something, there's usually a follow-up question, right? Somebody says, but what about this? What about mobile traffic? What about desktop traffic? Maybe you just did like a holistic view and maybe there's a big difference on one of those device categories. Being able to crack open the hood and see that it's exciting to me.
That's awesome. We know your time's incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some with us. For our folks watching and listening who want to learn more, where is the best place for them to go to learn more about Josh Lauer and Lauer Creations?
Right now, I'd say find me on LinkedIn. You can search for my name. It's the full name there, Joshua Lauer, Joshua Lauer. Send me a message with the words deep dive audit or just that you heard me on a podcast and you're interested in a deep dive audit. And I'll get in touch with a link to schedule some time and have a conversation about how I could help you out.
All right. Well, we greatly appreciate that. This has been Seth Greene here with Joshua Lauer. Everyone, thank you so much for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.